The morning Vivian Hartley told her younger sister about the man she had found for her, she made it sound like love. They were sitting at the kitchen table of the Hartley family home in Pasadena, the Spanish colonial their parents had left them, jointly, which had been a source of quietly managed tension for 3 years. Vivian had arrived early and made Clara's preferred coffee, which was the first sign that something was being arranged. Clara Hartley, 29, came downstairs in the oversized sweater she'd owned since graduate school and found her older sister at the table with 2 mugs and an expression of generous concern that Clara had spent 29 years learning to read the way farmers read incoming weather. "I want you to meet someone," Vivian said. Clara sat down. "Who?" "His name is Owen Mercer. He's a contractor. Steady guy. Dependable." Vivian paused in the particular way she paused when she needed something to settle before the next sentence. "He has a daughter, Sophie. She's 6. Absolutely wonderful. He went through some financial trouble a couple of years back. Lost the company. He's been rebuilding." Clara wrapped both hands around her mug. "A contractor who lost his company," she said. "He's a good man, Clara. That's what matters. He's not flashy. He's not impressive on paper. But he's real. And you've been alone for 2 years, saying you want something real." What Vivian did not say, she did not say that she had first encountered Owen Mercer's name 4 months earlier, in a due diligence file that had crossed her desk at the Century City law firm where she worked as a senior estate attorney. She did not say that the name had appeared in connection with a corporate restructuring so clean it had initially looked like a dead end. A former real estate development company dissolved, assets dispersed, principals gone. She did not say that the more she pulled at the thread, the more extraordinary the thread became. She did not say what she had found on the other side of it. She did not say that the man her sister was about to meet was, behind a wall of holding entities and legal structures, more complex than anything she had built in 12 years of estate law, worth approximately $3.8 billion. She did not say any of this because she had a plan, and the plan required Clara to be married to Owen Mercer before anyone, particularly Clara, understood what was actually happening. What Vivian had calculated, Clara's loneliness, Clara's generous heart, Clara's lifelong, exhausting habit of assuming that her older sister meant well. What Vivian had not calculated, that Owen Mercer had been waiting for the Hartley name to come to him, that he had been waiting for 4 years, and that he was extraordinarily, precisely good at being exactly what people expected him to be. Clara Hartley was the kind of woman other people called good and didn't always mean it as a compliment. Good as in, she remembered your birthday without Facebook. Good as in, she drove 90 minutes to help a colleague move apartments and declined when offered gas money. Good as in, when their mother had been sick, Clara had taken 3 months of unpaid leave from her job while Vivian managed the estate. She had a master's degree in social work from USC and managed a small family services nonprofit in East Los Angeles. The salary covered her half of the Pasadena house's expenses and left enough for groceries, her library card, and the occasional dinner out that she usually ended up splitting with someone who needed it more. She had been in one serious relationship since graduate school. A man named Trevor, who had been kind and careful for 3 years, and then, in the way that sometimes happens with kind and careful people, had been offered a position in Portland and had chosen it over asking her to come with him. She had told people it was mutual. It mostly was. She did not date strategically or with calculation. She dated the way she did most things, directly, with her full attention, and with a kind of open trust that had served her extremely well with everyone in her life except Vivian. She did not distrust Vivian consciously. She simply noticed things and didn't always say what she noticed. When she met Owen Mercer, he was standing outside a coffee shop on Colorado Boulevard on a Saturday in November, holding the hand of a 6-year-old girl with red rain boots and an expression of complete authority over the sidewalk. He was wearing a canvas work jacket and jeans. He was not trying to be anything. Clara extended her hand. "Clara," she said. "Owen." He shook it with a directness that felt honest. The little girl looked up at Clara with the frank assessment of a child who has learned to take nothing for granted. "I'm Sophie," she said. "Do you like rain boots?" "I love rain boots," Clara said. Sophie looked down at her own. "Mine are the best," she said, with complete finality. Owen closed his eyes for half a second in the expression of a man who has accepted that his 6-year-old is going to run every conversation and has made peace with it. Clara laughed, genuinely, the kind that arrived before she could curate it. She thought, "This is a real person." She should also have thought, "Why did my sister arrange this so specifically?" She would think the second thing later, when it cost more. 4 years earlier, Owen Mercer's name had been Owen Gallagher. The Gallagher name in Southern California meant commercial real estate on a generational scale. Properties along the coast, inland developments, and, less visibly, the specific and lucrative practice of acquiring distressed parcels in recovering neighborhoods before the recovery became visible to anyone without access to the right city planning documents. Owen had run the acquisition division at 27. He had been good at it in the way that people are good at things they have grown up inside. Instinctively, efficiently, and without, for a long time, examining what the instinct was serving. What had broken him open was not a single moment. It was a file. A development project in East Pasadena. A block of rent-controlled apartments, home to 63 families, acquired through a series of legal maneuvers that were individually clean and collectively designed to make challenge impossible. The displacement had been engineered to look, in all regulatory documentation, like routine improvement activity. The legal architect of the filing structure, the attorney whose name appeared on every key authorization document, was a man named Gerald Hartley, Clara and Vivian's father. Owen had taken the file to his own father. His father had told him that the deal was done and the families were not his concern. Owen had spent the following 6 months making other arrangements. He had legally restructured his assets through a holding company under the Mercer name, so thoroughly that a team of forensic accountants would need significant time to trace the connection back. He had moved with his daughter Sophie, whose mother had left when Sophie was 8 months old, a story he kept brief and without bitterness, to a rented house in Glassell Park. He had established, to all outward appearances, the profile of a contractor who had lost his company and was rebuilding. He was not rebuilding. He was waiting. Gerald Hartley had died 2 years after the project, leaving his estate to his 2 daughters. The displaced families had never received restitution. The legal documentation was still there in a file in Owen's home office, organized and complete. He was waiting for the right instrument to bring it into the correct light. When a woman named Vivian Hartley appeared at a real estate conference in Beverly Hills and spent 20 minutes on her phone before approaching him, When she introduced herself using her father's name, Owen had recognized it immediately. He had kept his face completely still. He had let her believe she had found something useful. She had, just not in the way she thought. Vivian Hartley managed appearances the way a surgeon manages a field. Precisely, constantly, with no tolerance for variables she had not accounted for. She was 33, a senior estate attorney at a well-regarded Century City firm. She had a West Hollywood apartment with a terrace that caught the city lights at night, a white Mercedes she had leased 2 years ago, and a professional reputation built on 12 years of meticulous work. She was also carrying a financial problem that had been quietly compounding for 3 years. Gerald Hartley's estate had included debt, significant, specific, and structured in a way that the estate documents had obscured. Vivian, who had administered the estate herself and had managed the information flow to Clara with the practiced selectivity of someone who had been controlling family narratives since childhood, had been servicing the debt privately. The arrangement was not sustainable. It was becoming urgently not sustainable. She needed something decisive. When she encountered Owen Mercer's name in the due diligence file, she had followed the thread with the careful attention of someone who had spent a career reading the space between what documents say and what they mean. She had not fully unraveled the holding structure. A complete unraveling would have taken more time and more access than she had. But she had seen enough. The assets were real. The value was substantial. Her plan was clean in the way that plans are clean before they encounter the people inside them. Clara would marry Owen. Over time, through the natural financial entanglement of marriage, Vivian would establish a relationship with Owen's resources. The debt would become manageable. Clara would never need to understand the full picture because Vivian had concluded over 29 years of shared history, trusted the people who were supposed to love her. What Vivian had not built into the plan, that Owen Mercer had no interest in being absorbed into anyone's orbit, that he had, in fact, built his own, and that the Hartley name was not an asset to him. It was a debt he intended to collect. Owen was careful. He was careful about how often he initiated contact and how much he revealed, because the things people discover feel more trustworthy than the things they are told. He was careful about Sophie, who functioned, in ways he noticed and felt some guilt about, as a kind of credibility anchor. It is very difficult to distrust a man whose 6-year-old daughter has decided you are the best thing to happen to her Saturday mornings. Sophie had decided exactly this. She had decided it because Clara was the only adult who had ever asked what her favorite animal was, and then, 2 weeks later, shown up with a library book about red pandas that she had found while looking for something else. Sophie carried the book for 3 weeks. When Clara arrived at the Glassell Park house for dinner for the first time and found Sophie's artwork covering the refrigerator, she had studied each drawing with the attention of someone at a gallery. "This one," Clara said, pointing to a figure in orange crayon. "That's Potato," Sophie said. "He's my imaginary dog." "What kind is he?" Sophie considered this with the gravity of a senior official. "The fluffy kind," she said. Owen watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway and felt something he had not expected to feel: trouble. Not trouble with the plan. The plan was intact. The Hartley documentation was organized. His attorney was ready. He had identified the correct legal forum and the correct moment. The trouble was with Clara herself. She was exactly what she appeared to be. He had spent enough time near people who performed warmth to recognize it clearly from the genuine article, and Clara Hartley was the genuine article in a way that made his chest uncomfortable. She worked 60-hour weeks at an underfunded nonprofit because she believed in what it did. She was funny in a dry, quiet way that arrived without warning. She made Sophie feel safe without making it a production. She was also, he could see, someone who had been let down by people who should have known better and had chosen, despite this, to keep trusting. He had not planned to feel guilty. He felt guilty. He continued. He told himself the purpose was larger than his discomfort. He told himself that 63 families deserved more than he was offering by walking away now. He told himself a great many things over the following 3 months. Then Vivian called him on a number she should not have had. "We should have a real conversation," she said, "about what you actually are." He kept his voice level. "I'm a contractor." "Owen." A pause with intention behind it. "I know the Mercer holding structure. I've seen enough to know it isn't a contracting operation." He understood then that she had found more than he had anticipated. He also understood that she was not going to expose him. She was going to try to use him. "Come for dinner," he said. "All 3 of us. You can get to know me properly." She accepted. He called his attorney that night and moved the timeline forward. Clara and Owen were married on a Saturday in April in the back garden of the Pasadena house, Clara's choice, which Vivian had lobbied against in favor of something more suited, she said to the occasion, a phrase that carried a weight Clara had not yet fully decoded. 40 people attended. Sophie wore red boots under her flower girl dress, which had not been the plan and was absolutely the correct outcome. She walked the aisle with the focused seriousness of someone executing a significant responsibility, scattering rose petals with careful deliberation, and then stood next to Clara during the vows and held her hand, which had not been choreographed, and was, for every person present, the most affecting moment of the afternoon. Vivian gave a toast that was warm and generous and contained, in its undertone, the quiet satisfaction of a woman watching a plan unfold correctly. Owen watched Vivian give the toast. He thought about the file in his home office. He thought about the 63 families. He thought about Clara's hand in his during the ceremony, the way she had looked at him, not with performance, but with the clear, direct look of someone who had decided to trust. He had not expected that look to carry weight. It carried weight. After the guests were gone, and Sophie was asleep in the yellow bedroom they had set up together in the Pasadena house, Owen and Clara sat on the back steps with 2 glasses of wine from a bottle a friend had brought. Clara said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "When Vivian introduced us, why did you agree to meet me?" He was quiet. "She approached me at a conference," he said. "She was interested in what I was." Clara looked at him in the particular way she looked at things she was deciding how to handle. "She was interested in what you had," Clara said. Not a question. He met her eyes. "Yes." A silence. "And you agreed anyway?" "Yes." "Why?" He looked at the garden her father had planted, the man whose name was on the displacement documents, the man who had signed papers that had moved 63 families out of their homes and called it improvement. "I had reasons," he said carefully. "Not all of them were good." Clara held her wine glass with both hands for a long moment. "Are you going to tell me the rest of it?" "Yes," he said. "Not tonight. But yes." She nodded. She did not leave. She did not produce a reaction. She sat on the back steps in the April night and finished her wine, and Owen understood, with a clarity that moved something permanent in him, that he had married a woman who was going to hold him to honesty in a way his plan had not fully accounted for. Children understand significantly more than they are credited for. Sophie Mercer, 6 years old, recently promoted to first grade, had understood several things in the months since Clara had entered their lives. She understood that her father was different around Clara, not running the careful quietness he used in most situations, but genuinely quieter, in the way a person is quiet when something has actually settled. She understood that Clara's sister Vivian looked at her father the way Marcus at school looked at the last birthday cupcake, calculating the angle of acquisition. She understood that there was a locked room in their new Pasadena home that her father entered sometimes and closed the door, and from which she occasionally heard him speaking in a voice that was not his everyday voice. And she understood, because children process in the night what adults process loudly and poorly, that something important was in motion that nobody had explained to her. She was waiting. On the morning the first visible fracture appeared, Sophie was at the kitchen table eating cereal when Vivian arrived without calling ahead, which she did with a frequency that Clara had gently raised and Vivian had gently continued. Vivian sat across from Sophie and poured herself coffee from Clara's pot and smiled at the room. "Good morning, everyone," she said. Sophie looked at her. "You didn't knock," Sophie said. Vivian smiled with the patient ease of an adult who has decided a child requires management rather than engagement. "I'm family, sweetheart." Sophie looked at her cereal, then back up. "My dad says people who walk into rooms without knocking are telling you something about themselves." She ate a spoonful of cereal. "He says you should listen when people do that." The kitchen was very quiet. Clara at the counter with her back to the room poured her coffee and said nothing, but her shoulders had stilled, and Sophie, eyes back on her cereal, had said precisely what she meant to say. 8 weeks after the wedding, Vivian arrived at the Pasadena house on a Tuesday evening, a specific choice because Owen had a sight walk on Tuesdays and typically arrived home after 7. She knew this because she had made it her business to know. She sat with Clara in the kitchen and laid out, with the composed precision of an estate attorney presenting a client proposal, what she described as a family financial restructuring. The Hartley estate, she said, carried some legacy complications. Their father had left certain matters unresolved. She had been managing them privately, but the situation had reached a point requiring a more permanent solution. Given Owen's clear resources— "Stop," Clara said. Vivian stopped. "You're asking me to use Owen's money to cover something in Dad's estate." "I'm asking for a family." "Vivian." Clara put both hands flat on the table. "How long have you known about the debt?" A pause. "It's been a complex situation for some time." "Did you know when you introduced me to Owen?" The pause was longer, which was its own answer. Clara was quiet for a long time. She looked at her sister. The person who had been there first, who was supposed to have been the one who protected her before she knew she needed protecting. "Tell me everything," Clara said, "from the beginning." Vivian told her approximately 60% of everything. It was still enough. Clara called Owen as soon as Vivian's car cleared the driveway. He answered on the second ring. She said, "I need you to tell me the rest, tonight." He came home. He sat across from her at the kitchen table. Sophie was asleep. The house was quiet. and for the first time in 4 years, Owen Gallagher told someone the complete truth. Owen spoke for 2 hours. He told her about Gallagher Properties. He told her about the East Pasadena development, the rent-controlled complex, the 63 families, the acquisition structure engineered to look like standard improvement activity in every regulatory filing that counted. He told her that her father's name appeared on every key authorization document, that Gerald Hartley had not been peripheral to the transaction. He had been its legal architect, the man who had structured the filings precisely to survive challenge, who had been paid substantially for making what had happened look like what it was not. He told her about the file in the Home Office. He told her he had built the Mercer identity while waiting for the correct moment to expose it. He told her that when Vivian had introduced herself at the Beverly Hills conference, he had recognized the name immediately and understood that the moment had arrived in a shape he had not anticipated. He told her he had not expected Clara. He told her that part last. His voice was different by then. Clara listened to all of it. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Long enough that the refrigerator cycled on and off, and a car passed outside, and Sophie shifted in her sleep down the hall. "You married me," she said finally, "because of my father." "I came to meet you because of your father," he said. "Those are different things. It became different." "When?" He thought about the Red Panda library book, about the back steps in April, about the way she had held his hand at the ceremony with the look of someone who had decided to trust. "Quickly," he said, and then completely. She looked at him for a long time. "The families," she said. "The 63. Do you know where they are now?" He had not expected that question first. "Some of them?" he said. "I've been tracking what I can." "What would they need?" she said. "Restitution, a legal settlement, public acknowledgement of what was done." Clara looked at the table. "Then we do that," she said. He stared at her. "Clara, my father caused this. The Hartley name caused this." Her voice was steady in the way it was steady when she had made a decision. "That debt belongs to us. Not to you to collect, to us to repay." She looked up at him. "But I need you to decide something." "What?" "Whether you're here because of the plan, or whether you're here because of us." The kitchen was completely quiet. Owen looked at the woman across the table, the woman who had heard everything and had led with the 63 families, not with herself. "There's no plan anymore," he said. Clara nodded once. "Okay," she said. "Then let's figure out what comes next." Vivian Hartley did not accept partial information. 3 days after her conversation with Clara, which had not gone the way she had expected, Clara being less manageable than Vivian's model of her, Vivian let herself into the Pasadena house with the key she had retained since their parents' estate. She did not knock. She was looking for leverage. Specifically, she was looking for documentation of Owen's actual financial position, something she could use to establish the terms of the arrangement she needed. She found the Home Office unlocked, which she took as luck. She was inside for 11 minutes before she found the file. She recognized her father's name in the first 3 pages. By page 7, she understood what she was reading. By page 12, she had photographed every document on her phone and left the house exactly as she had found it. She sat in her white Mercedes in the driveway for 4 minutes. Then she called a number she kept in a separate contact list under an innocuous name. a contact she had cultivated over years for exactly the category of situation she was now in. His name was Dennis Pryor. He was a journalist with a mid-level digital outlet and a reputation for packaging complicated financial stories in ways that moved quickly through aggregators. "I have something," she told him. "A real estate fraud story. Significant family name. Clear documentation." "How significant?" "Significant enough," Vivian said. What she was calculating: if the story ran with the Hartley name attached to the fraud, it would destroy the Hartley estate's remaining reputation. But if she controlled the narrative, if she positioned herself as the daughter who had uncovered it, the attorney who was cooperating with authorities, she could redirect the damage, distance herself, protect her own practice, and use the resulting chaos to pressure Owen into a financial arrangement while he was managing the fallout. What she had not calculated, that Owen had known she was in the house, that the lock on the home office had been left open intentionally, that the file she had photographed was not the complete file, and that Owen's attorney had been notified the moment she drove away. The story ran on a Thursday morning. Dennis Pryor's piece framed it as an investigative exposé. A decades-old real estate fraud, 63 families displaced, a prominent Pasadena attorney named as the legal architect, the Hartley name in the headline, a photograph of the Pasadena house. By 9 a.m., Clara's phone was flooded. By 10 a.m., 3 board members of her nonprofit had called. By 10:15, Vivian had sent a text. "This wasn't me. Someone leaked. We need to talk strategy." Clara read the text twice, set her phone face down. At 11 a.m., Owen's attorney, a woman named Frances Okafor, whose practice in downtown Los Angeles specialized in exactly the category of corporate accountability case that the Hartley documentation represented, filed a civil complaint on behalf of 11 of the 63 original families who had been located and who had agreed to be named plaintiffs. At noon, a second story ran. Not in Pryor's outlet, in the Los Angeles Times. The Times story was different. It named Vivian Hartley specifically, not as a cooperating source, but as the person who had leaked the partial documentation to Pryor. It included a timeline showing that Vivian had accessed the Pasadena home office 3 days after a conversation with Clara, in which she had been confronted about the estate debt. It included a statement from Frances Okafor describing the civil complaint and its basis. And it included a detail that sent the story to every major aggregator within 40 minutes. The man who had assembled the documentation, who had been tracking its evidentiary completeness for 4 years, who was listed as a material witness in the civil complaint, was identified not as Owen Mercer, contractor, but as Owen Gallagher, son of the Gallagher Properties family, CEO of Gallagher Mercer Holdings, a private investment vehicle with assets under management that the Times, citing financial analysts, estimated conservatively at $3.8 billion. The man Vivian had arranged for her sister to marry, the man Vivian had intended to absorb into her debt solution, was one of the wealthiest private investors in Southern California. And he had been waiting 4 years for exactly this moment. By 2 p.m., Vivian's office line was not accepting calls. By 4 p.m., the California State Bar had received a formal complaint regarding the conduct of a licensed estate attorney in relation to the administration of a specific probate matter. Dennis Pryor issued a correction and named his source before the end of the business day. Clara sat in the Pasadena kitchen, phone off, hands around a mug of tea that had gone cold. Sophie came in from school, dropped her backpack, and climbed onto the chair across from Clara. "You look like when Dad has a hard day," Sophie said. "It is a hard day," Clara said. Sophie considered this. "Dad says hard days are the ones that matter," she said, "because those are the days you find out what's actually true." Clara looked at the 6-year-old across the table. "Your dad says smart things," she said. "Yeah," Sophie agreed, opening her backpack. "He says I got it from him, but I think I got it from both." Clara laughed, the genuine kind, arriving without permission. And for the first time that day, something loosened. Vivian Hartley made one more move. She drove to the Pasadena house that evening. No call, no text. She let herself in through the front door and found Clara in the kitchen and Owen at the counter, the two of them standing in the quiet companionship of people who have been through something together and have landed on the same side of it. Vivian looked at Owen. For the first time since Beverly Hills, her composure cracked. "You knew," she said. "You knew the whole time." "Yes," Owen said. "You let me set this up. You let me arrange the introduction. You used my sister." "I used the introduction you offered," Owen said. "What happened afterward was not the plan." "Then what was the plan?" Owen looked at her steadily. "The plan was the civil complaint. The plan was the documentation and the families and the accountability your father's estate owes. The plan was never about you." A pause. "You made it about you." Vivian turned to Clara. "Clara?" Her voice shifted, softer. The voice from their childhood, the voice Vivian used when she needed something real from her sister. "I'm sorry. I should have told you about the debt. I should have told you everything, but I did this for us, for the family." Clara was quiet for a moment. "You did this for yourself," Clara said. "There's a difference, and you know there's a difference." Vivian's eyes filled, real tears, which Clara had seen perhaps 4 times in their shared life. "I don't know how to fix this," Vivian said. "You start," Clara said, "by calling Francis Okafor's office and providing a complete voluntary statement. Everything you know about how the estate was administered. Everything Dad told you, if he told you anything." A pause. "Did he?" A long silence. Vivian looked at the table. "He knew about some of it," she said quietly. "Not all of it, but some. The kitchen held this." "Okay," Clara said. "Then we start there." She did not forgive Vivian in that moment. She did not perform a reconciliation. She offered a starting point, which was, for Clara Hartley, exactly as far as she was willing to go tonight. On a Saturday morning, 2 weeks after the Times story ran, Sophie came to breakfast with a drawing. She set it on the table in front of Owen without explanation and went to get her cereal. Owen looked at the drawing. It was a house, the Pasadena house, identifiable by the arched windows she had reproduced with careful crayon attention. Outside the house were 4 figures: a tall man, a woman with dark hair, a small girl in red boots, and, added in a different color, which meant it had been a separate decision, a 4th figure, smaller, off to the side looking in. Owen looked at his daughter. "Who's the 4th one?" he asked. Sophie poured her cereal. "That's the person who hasn't figured out yet that they can come inside," she said. Owen looked at the drawing again. Clara came in from the back garden with her morning coffee and looked at the drawing on the table. "Sophie drew this?" she asked. "This morning," Owen said. Clara looked at the small figure at the edge, outside the house, looking in. She picked up the drawing carefully. She looked at it for a long time. Then she set it on the refrigerator, next to Sophie's red panda drawings from month 1, and held it in place with a magnet shaped like a sun. "Okay," she said. She did not say what she meant by it. She did not need to. Owen understood. Sophie, eating her cereal, did not look up, but she was smiling. The civil complaint moved faster than anyone in the Hartley family's orbit had anticipated. Francis Okafor was the kind of attorney who treated every case with the specific patience of someone who had assembled the evidence before initiating the filing, and the Gallagher-Mercer documentation was exceptionally complete. 11 families had agreed to be named plaintiffs. 22 more came forward after the Times piece ran. The complaint sought restitution, damages, and a formal public acknowledgement of the displacement. Vivian's voluntary statement, delivered to Francis Okafor's office on a Tuesday morning in the presence of her own attorney, and with the particular stillness of someone who has decided that the cost of honesty is lower than the cost of continuing, materially advanced the case. Gerald Hartley's estate was named as a defendant. The liability was substantial. The Pasadena house, jointly owned, the source of quiet tension, the house their mother had arranged her garden in, would need to be sold. The proceeds would go toward the settlement fund. Clara had known this was likely since the night Owen had told her everything. She had made peace with it before Vivian had. On the day the settlement was formally agreed, Owen came home to find Clara in the back garden, the garden her father had planted, the one that did not know anything about what had happened inside the house it surrounded. She was sitting on the back steps with a cup of coffee. He sat beside her. "The house goes to market next month," she said. "I know. I'm okay with it." He looked at her. "We could—" he began. "No," she said, without letting him finish. "Whatever we build next, we build on ground that's ours, not something that needs clearing first." He understood. "Francis's office found 4 more families this week," he said, bringing the total to 31 named plaintiffs. Clara nodded. "Good," she said, and she meant it. Not as performance, not as management, but as the simple, clean fact of a woman who understood that some debts are real, and repaying them is the only honest direction forward. The garden was quiet. A hummingbird appeared at the feeder Clara had installed in March, hovered for a moment, and left. "Where do you want to go?" Owen asked. "After the house." Clara thought about it. "Somewhere with a good school for Sophie," she said. "And a yard. She needs a yard." "She's been drawing yards," Owen said, "in the pictures she shows me." "I know," Clara said. "I've seen them." He looked at her. She looked back. "Somewhere with room," she said. He nodded. "I know a place," he said. The California State Bar investigation proceeded methodically. The complaint alleged that Vivian Hartley, in her capacity as the administering attorney for the Gerald Hartley estate, had materially misrepresented the estate's financial condition to the co-beneficiary, her sister, and had administered estate assets in a manner that served her own financial interests rather than the estate's beneficiaries. The complaint further alleged that Vivian had, in the course of attempting to address those conflicts, engaged in conduct constituting unauthorized disclosure of privileged documentation. The Mercer Holdings file, which she had accessed without authorization and leaked selectively to a journalist. Vivian cooperated fully. Her own attorney had advised her that cooperation was the only viable path, and Vivian, who had spent 12 years as an estate attorney, understood the landscape clearly enough to take the advice. She received a formal censure. Her license was suspended for 8 months. Her firm accepted her resignation. She moved out of the West Hollywood apartment. The lease had been beyond her actual means for the better part of a year, and into a smaller place in Culver City. She called Clara on a Sunday afternoon 3 weeks after the bar's decision. Clara answered. "I don't expect you to be okay with any of this," Vivian said. "I'm not," Clara said. "Not yet." "I know." A silence. "Sophie drew a picture of the new house," Clara said. "She put you in it, off to the side." "But in it." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "She's a perceptive kid," Vivian said. "Yes," Clara said. "She is." Another silence, different from the first one. "Can I come for dinner sometime?" Vivian said. "Not now, when it's time." "When it's time," Clara said. "Yes." She did not say when. She did not say it would be soon, but she said yes, which was further than she had been 3 months ago, and for Vivian, it was enough to work toward. Frances Okafor stood at the front of the settlement conference room in her downtown Los Angeles office on a Tuesday in September and laid out the final terms. 33 families. Individual restitution payments calculated on the basis of displacement duration, documented financial harm, and current housing costs. A collective acknowledgement fund for community resources in the affected neighborhood. A formal public statement to be signed by the representatives of the Gerald Hartley estate, acknowledging the nature and impact of the displacement. Owen sat at one side of the table. Clara sat beside him. They had come together, which had not been required by any legal obligation. It had been Clara's choice. The Hartley family acknowledges the harm caused. The estate's representative read from the prepared statement. "We acknowledge that the legal mechanisms used in this transaction were designed to prevent the challenge that these families deserved the right to mount. We acknowledge that acknowledgement is not sufficient. We commit to the terms of this settlement as the beginning of a material attempt at accountability." When the signing was complete, one of the original 63, a woman named Darlene Osei, who had been 72 years old when she was displaced and was now 76 and had been located by Frances Okafor's office in a smaller apartment in Monrovia, looked across the table at Clara. "I don't know who your daddy was as a man," Darlene said, "but I know who you are." Clara looked at her. "I'm sorry it took this long," Clara said. Darlene nodded once, slowly. "It took what it took," she said. "You're here now." Clara kept her composure through the rest of the conference. She did not keep it in the elevator down to the lobby. Owen did not say anything. He stood beside her and let it be what it was. The complicated, legitimate grief of a woman settling a debt she had not created but had chosen to honor. Sophie was waiting in the lobby with Frances Okafor's assistant working on a drawing. She looked up when the elevator opened. She looked at Clara's face. She walked over and took Clara's hand without saying anything, and they walked out into the September afternoon together. The three of them, into the ordinary Los Angeles light. And Clara felt, for the first time in months, that the weight she had been carrying had shifted. Not gone, but distributed differently, among people who had chosen to carry it together. Owen told Clara the last piece on a Friday night in October, in the kitchen of the house in San Marino they had moved into 2 months after the Pasadena sale. Sophie was at a sleepover. The house was quiet. He said, "There's something I haven't told you." She looked up from her book. "When I first agreed to meet you," he said, "I had a specific purpose. The documentation was assembled. The civil complaint was drafted. I needed access to the Hartley family in a form that would hold up, that would give me standing to bring the complaint credibly. She was quiet. The plan, he said, was to use the marriage as the mechanism, to be close enough to the Hartley estate that the complaint would have personal standing behind it, not just a former business associate with a grievance, a family member, someone the court and the press would take seriously as a human being with legitimate stake. Clara looked at him. "Did you love me when we got married?" she asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "I was in the process of it," he said. "I didn't know yet what the word meant when it was real rather than when it was decided." She held his eyes. "And now?" "Now I know the difference," he said. "And yes." She was quiet for another moment. She looked at her book. She closed it. "I knew," she said. He stared. "Not all of it," she said, "but enough to know you weren't entirely what you appeared to be. I knew the night we sat on the back steps and you said you had reasons you weren't sure were good." She looked at him steadily. "I knew there was more, and I chose to wait for you to tell me." "Why?" he said. "Because the parts that were real," she said, "and I decided to trust those parts while I waited for the rest." He looked at her for a long time. "That's a significant amount of trust to extend to someone who didn't deserve it yet," he said. "I know," she said. "But you did eventually." He reached across the table. She took his hand. "Don't make me wait that long again," she said. "I won't," he said. And he meant it in the way a person means something when they have understood, finally and completely, what they are committing to. Spring came to San Marino the way it arrives in Southern California, quietly, the light shifting before the temperature does, the garden waking up without announcement. Clara ran the Family Services nonprofit from a new office in Pasadena that Owen had helped her secure, not as a gift, not as leverage, but as a straightforward real estate transaction that she had reviewed and approved term by term, because she did not accept arrangements she hadn't read completely. Bridging Hartley, the community restitution fund established through the settlement, administered by Francis Okafor's office, had, in its first year, funded housing navigation services for 412 families in the East Pasadena neighborhood. Clara sat on its advisory board. She attended every quarterly meeting. Vivian came to dinner for the first time in February. She came to the front door and knocked. Sophie answered, because Sophie had been watching for her car from the living room window for 40 minutes without telling anyone she was watching. "Hi," Sophie said. Vivian looked at the 6-year-old in the doorway. "Hi," she said. Sophie stepped aside to let her in. "Dad made the good pasta," Sophie said, "with the crispy part on top. It's important." Vivian smiled. A real one, the kind that arrived in spite of itself. "Good to know," she said. Dinner was not simple. It was not the resolution of everything. There were silences that carried weight and moments that required everyone to choose, consciously, to stay in the room. But they stayed. After dinner, while Owen and Sophie were doing dishes with the particular chaotic efficiency of two people who had developed a dishwashing system that made no sense to anyone observing it, Clara and Vivian sat at the kitchen table with their coffee. Vivian said, "I'm starting over." "I know," Clara said. "I don't know what it looks like yet." "That's okay," Clara said. "It doesn't have to look like anything yet." Vivian looked at her coffee. "I'm sorry," she said. Not a strategic apology, not managed. Just the word, plain. "I know," Clara said. A silence. We're not back to where we were, Clara said, but we're somewhere, and somewhere is something to build from. Vivian nodded. From the kitchen came the sound of Sophie insisting that she was absolutely doing the pan correctly, and Owen insisting equally that she was absolutely not, and then laughter. Both of them, the specific laughter of two people who have been arguing comfortably for long enough that the argument is actually the conversation. Vivian looked toward the kitchen. She's good, she said. She's extraordinary, Clara said. She has been from the beginning. Owen appeared in the doorway, dish towel over his shoulder. Sophie has declared the kitchen clean, he said, by her standards, which are not the standards of anyone else. Good enough is good enough, Sophie announced from somewhere behind him. Clara laughed. Vivian laughed. Owen looked at his wife, across the kitchen table in their San Marino house, in the ordinary light of a Friday night in April, and something in him that had been running calculations since he was 27 years old went quiet. Not finished, not resolved into some perfect stillness, just quiet, the way things go quiet when they have found where they belong. Sophie appeared in the doorway beside her father. She looked at the adults at the table with the comprehensive assessment of a 7-year-old who has decided how things are. "Can we have the cookies now?" she said. Clara looked at Owen. Owen looked at Clara. "Yes," they said at the same time. Sophie was already on her way to the cabinet. She did not look back. She already knew the answer. So the story has come full circle. And if you've stayed with us all the way to this moment, and I mean really stayed, not just let it play in the background, then something in this story found you. Maybe it was Sophie. Maybe it was Clara sitting on those back steps, knowing something wasn't completely right, and choosing to trust the parts that were real anyway. Maybe it was the 63 families. The real weight in a story that could have just been about wealth and revenge. Here's the thing that Marcus Aurelius wrote in a journal he never intended anyone to read. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Clara didn't fix what her father did. She couldn't. But she chose what to do with the truth when it arrived, and that choice, not the wealth, not the revenge, not the beautiful house at the end, is the whole story. Debts are real. The ones we inherit, the ones we create, the ones we carry without knowing why we're tired. The only honest direction is toward them, not away. If this story moved you, if something in it landed somewhere real, please hit like, share it with someone who needed to hear it today, and subscribe so we can keep walking through stories together. You are not behind. You are building. And that is always, always enough. This story is entirely fictional and was created for entertainment and emotional storytelling purposes only. All characters, including Clara Hartley, Owen Mercer, Vivian Hartley, Sophie, Francis Okafor, Gerald Hartley, and all others, are fictional and bear no relation to any real individuals, living or deceased. The Gallagher properties, Mercer Holdings, Bridging Hartley Fund, and all organizations depicted are entirely invented. Any resemblance to real persons, companies, legal cases, or events is entirely coincidental. The legal and financial scenarios depicted have been dramatized for narrative purposes and do not represent accurate depictions of real legal processes or financial structures. This content is intended to explore themes of family, accountability, trust, and redemption through dramatic fiction. Thank you for watching with an open mind and understanding the creative nature of this storytelling.